back, YouTube. This is the Allegheny Northern in N-scale, and today we are discussing the October 2021 layout update. We're also running some trains, but we'll try to keep this mostly business. So, in today's first order of business, let's talk about things that we've been doing. Probably one of the big changes is there is actually a rock face now behind our coal marshaling yard. There's a couple of trees that I had been working on. If you watch the How to Improve Woodland Scenic Trees, you will know how I did those trees and how I've got a few more to do. But we got that rock side, that's just Woodland Scenic carving plaster. I carved it into what I thought looked like pretty decent rocks for the southwestern Pennsylvania area. And then I detailed them using Woodland Scenic's earth tone colors, the pigments that they use for their plasters. So got that done. It's good because for the longest time it's just been styrofoam, so it's nice to actually have some rocks behind the scene now. Not that that's much of an update, but there's just something about watching that coal train come flying around the layout that's kind of makes all the hobby worth it when you get trackside every now and then to enjoy the fruits of your labor, I guess. And since we're talking about a coal train, let's talk about what's been changing here at the coal-fired power plant. So, if you guys all recall, there used to be a mountain range here, and I had a track that curved off, looped around the back. There were some switches back there and a yard, pretty much sized the way this one is. The only difference is all of the switches were against the back wall, and this is the limit of my reach if I'm just trying to reach. So I can't really get back there very easily. Not to mention it was on a slight grade backwards, so the cars didn't necessarily want to stop unless you applied a handbrake. And a handbrake looks something like this. It's just a piece of wire on a piece of styrene that would hold it in place until I was ready to move the cars. Basically, it was a pain in the ass and it didn't work, so we changed everything so that now, even though these at someday will be remote, if I ever have an issue with a car derailing, locomotive derailing, it derails right where I can reach it from either side of the peninsula. Okay, so just an overview here from the other side. I did want to represent some of the old line's history, so I left some track in place. Made it look like an abandoned portion of track. You can see there's some rails and some ties back there, and of course the roadbed goes around the back just as it did when the track was actually there. I loosely modeled the structures in place, kind of get an idea where I want them based around the track now. So they need leveled out a little bit. They also need, the parking lot needs put in, and the scenery is not quite done. They're just there to sort of represent what it's going to look like when it's done. So for right now, those are all placeholders. When I come around to the lake here, the rocks along the side are simply plaster carvings that are left over, and I dyed them using some acrylic paint, and Woodland Scenic's water products make up the rest there. We'll pull back just so we can watch the trains meet. And yes, you'll notice that my trains are running on the right hand again. They were all left hand running in some of the earlier clips. And if you watch my video on the first switching, you'll understand why the trains were on the left-hand side, not the right-hand side, so we fixed that. Okay, also in this area, I have a bonus scene. I've hinted at it a couple of times, and I finally did it. So I've got my little archaeological dig here. I've got some guys, they are uncovering some new dinosaur bones. So those three gentlemen right there are hard at work. You'll notice there's a guy back here. He's running, and the reason he is running is because he actually found himself a real dinosaur, and it's chasing him out of the woods. Now this guy here, you'll notice he's sort of stopped dead in his tracks, and he's kind of in a panic, and that's because he also found himself a dinosaur And if you look in the back there, there is a 3D dinosaur printed that looked strangely like Bumpy from Camp Cretaceous. And for you older folks, if you don't know what Camp Cretaceous is, ask your kids because they probably watched it on Netflix. But these dinosaurs were 3D printed, and I made this little humorous scene here, basically because, well, it was fun, and two, because boy did I have fun painting those dinosaurs. It was just something different, and don't forget we're doing this in N-scale, so they're tiny, and they came from Shapeways, which is where a lot of my vehicles have come from. They have a lot of things on there perfect for the modelers, especially in N-scale. So it's a source of constant enjoyment and excitement when I go on there and find new things. And those dinosaurs were actually given to me as a gift from my brother and sister-in-law. So they now are prominently spotted on my layout, and they're set back just far enough that once all the scenery is complete, you're going to be able to see them, but you're going to have to look for them. So it's sort of a little Easter egg for visitors to find when they come to the layout. So I don't have any problem doing things like that to the layout. It doesn't ruin the prototypical sense of the layout from, you know, what we're trying to accomplish here. It adds a little vignette that is by itself, and it is self-contained, and quite frankly, it's fun. So I encourage you to incorporate stuff like that into your layout, just because, one, it adds visual interest for somebody who may not necessarily be down with the operations and the more complicated stuff, and it's still, like I said, it lets you do something different on your layout. Okay, started working on the track up here in the town that is yet to be named. So the board is really out of shape. The carpentry skills were not on this one, and the wood just, it got warped, and it made a mess. So rather than trying to replace it all, since it's hung and it's now stuck between two other elevated sections and it's actually part of the support, I figured it would be better just to shim the track in place. So I've been doing that, shimming the track, making sure all the wires are correct and soldered and all that, and that the trains can back and forth over them without any issues, and we are now at that point. So after much testing with different cars, different sizes, different locomotives, this town is officially track ready. So it's time to start some scenery up here. Okay, so back into this town here, I changed out the right-hand switch that was there for a Y, and I wanted to have the nice diverging route and make sure that that was that worked, because I started running my track. Don't pay attention to this aerial piece here, but I started running my track down my land bridge and across the intermodal yard, and oh yeah, I put the intermodal yard in. So I have all of this track now here set in place, and what you're looking to the left here, so these tracks here are incoming and outgoing container trains, and this one right here, which we follow all the way down here to these two tracks, this is going to be a place where I can unload cars. So I have a place for my auto racks to go to. And no, it doesn't hold a ton of auto racks. I'm probably only going to get about 6, maybe 7 in there. But it gives me a reason to tack them onto the end of some of my intermodal trains. And I think auto racks are pretty cool. You see them on a lot of trains here in the area. In fact, sometimes they're in unit trains. Sometimes they're tacked on the end of intermodal. But I wanted to model that. So how I'm going to do it is, this is going to essentially be the end of dry land right here, and I'm going to model just the very sliver of the end of the, I'll call it the end of the earth. We're going to have some ocean here, and then that's going to wrap around the back, and I'm actually going to try to put a cargo ship back there. There are not very many options. Actually, there's almost no options for N-scale cargo ships that are to scale, and I know that they are absolutely massive, because if you've ever been to the city of Savannah, Georgia, and you have stood along the river street and you've seen the cargo ships go up the Savannah River so close that you can damn near touch them, which I don't recommend, but they are just massive, massive machines, and even in N-scale, they would be massive. So I think I'm gonna have to scratch build something, because honestly, I haven't found anything online that is either one, big enough, or two, reasonably priced. There is one site that I found that does nothing but N-scale ships, and it looked like a cargo ship that would fit this layout perfectly is around $500, and I can't justify $500 for a background model. So I think using my favorite shapeways and some other script building techniques here, I'm probably going to just build myself a container ship, and then obviously I have to do the rest of the container yard. So there'll be a check-in point, and for trucks and all that sort of stuff in the back there. Then I've got container cranes and all that good stuff. So now I did do all of this out of unit track, because one, unit track is what the rest of the layout is. It runs great, it handles well, and it's the way to go. But the reason I like it even more is because I can manipulate it now. So if I start running trains up here and I don't like the way this thing runs, well, I can just pull the track apart and do it in a different configuration. And that's really one of the things that I love most about unit track. Now, unit track does have one very big drawback to it that I have seen, and that is sometimes you build yourself into situations where you need a weird shaped piece. And Kato offers you some weird shaped pieces, but if you don't have it, then you can cut a piece of flex track like I did. And this is a do as I say, not as I do. I don't necessarily condone this, because it's cheating, and you know, it's not really the way you're supposed to do it. But I have so much extra flex track left over from building the staging yard. I'm slowly using it up for various projects, and this is a perfect use for it. So instead of buying a weird shaped piece, I made a weird shaped piece. I'll put some foam backing underneath there, just so that I have a foam roadbed in place to keep this thing stable. But once this is all set to go and I've tested it, it's going to be buried, because this is all going to be buried in a concrete, basically. So you're never going to see it. You won't know that I did that. Don't necessarily pick up on my bad habits, but that's kind of sort of what I did. And I did it here too, because I needed a curved turnout for what I wanted to do here, and they don't make it in Kato. Okay, I had to go grab the train that had derailed and then caused the other train to derail. So my layout runs beautifully, except for two times, and that is when there are guests at the house. They don't like to run, and also when I'm doing a video and I'm trying to let them run in the background, they decide they don't want to run. I swear that when the layout is operating just me, everything runs perfectly, and I have no issues. Nothing comes uncoupled, nothing comes derailed. As soon as I try to do something else and I don't pay enough attention to them, then they go all over the place. So anyway, we're back here. So I needed a curved track switch, and the only turnout that I could find that was curved was from Atlas, and the only curved turnout that I could find from Atlas was code 55 rail, which is not what Kato is. I believe it's 80 or something like that. And so my solution to that was very simple. I flattened out some rail joiners, and I put a little bit of solder on them, and then I nestled the ties into it using a file. Then I cleaned up the joints, and I have a fairly smooth joint here, and I've run some cars over it. It's not wired yet, so I haven't run any locomotives over it, but they do appear to take trains over it. So as long as the locomotives don't do anything funky, I do have myself a nice curved turnout. So this upper deck here is going to pretty much be the source of future videos. I know I still have the terminal to work on in the peninsula, and we'll get to that as I can. But right now we're trying to get some of this scenery done so that those trains have something other than plywood to run through. So got to complete this scene, the new scene down here. I got to start working up above, and then also, of course, we need to get the terminal into some shape because I still have scenery that's not done here for the auto rack cars that are the Amtrak, for the auto train that services this station. And then, of course, I also need to do some work on the station. So there's other projects coming. I assure you, you will not be bored for upcoming projects. But for now, that is going to be our October update. And there's a couple of videos coming up. One is a weathering. We're going to weather a patched car. Old, I think it's a Seaboard line. It's now going to be, I think it's Conrail of all things. So we're gonna model that. And then if you followed my previous video of switching Aurora, you will note that our train is still sitting on the tracks, hasn't moved, and we need to get that. Those are our empty cars. We need to get them out of there, and this little local needs to finish its duty. And yes, if you were wondering, there's Brandon. He's still holding his flag. Well, let's go, Brandon. We're trying to get him to do something, but as you can see right now, he's doing nothing because his train is not moving. So we will finish that switching operation, and stay tuned for those videos coming up here right before the holidays. And of course, because it's holiday season, I will do a video on getting your layout ready for the holidays. So obviously we had a derailment tonight, and I will do a video on how to avoid those derailments. Everybody focuses on the obvious, the track, and making sure it's clean, and making sure your cars all have, compatible couplers and all that. But there are a lot of things to consider, and it's always good right before the holidays when all the guests are going to show up to review some good habits to make sure your railroad is running at top performance for your guests. So that video will be coming up as well. All right, for the Allegheny Northern, we are signing off for this video, and we will come to you in the end of November here with the next update.